Hey, thanks for having me here. As Nate said, I work at Cedar Creek Church, and actually I was going to kind of save that and use all the fancy terminology, and this is what I put down. I said, I oversee communications, marketing, and social media at one of the largest faith-based nonprofits in Northwest Ohio. In fact, in our industry, so I'll give it a second. We good? Second for us? Okay, great. In our industry, we're actually the second largest in the state of Ohio. So it's a pretty large organization. I studied entrepreneurship, small and family business at UT. That's where I got my degree from. But ultimately, the type of people that I'm inspired by are people just like you. I was talking to Nate, and he was talking through how we're just a gathering of creatives, of people who are innovators, people who are entrepreneurs and leaders in tech. And so for probably the next 3 hours or so, I'm hoping that, I'm just a joke, just chill out. My passion is really I want to help individuals, teams, and organizations find creative solutions for their biggest problems. And the way that I want to do that is helping people productively apply their unique talents. And so I spent a lot of time with the Gallup organization, and I'm actually a certified strengths coach through Gallup, and Gallup does a lot of research, and they study what the best teams look like, what the best individuals look like, and how to get the most out of your people. And all of their studies and research really revolves around this idea of engagement. So what I'm hoping is that if you're someone that leads other people, whether that means at your job or at home, wherever you're at, in your family, if you lead other people, I hope that you're thinking about how you can get other people engaged. And if you don't lead other people, if you kind of like do your own thing, if you are an entrepreneur, if you're creative on your own, I think that this will apply on how you lead yourself. So as we talked about with Gallup, according to the Gallup organization, about 70% of Americans come to work every single day. They spend the majority of their day leaving their best selves at home. 70%. So that's 7 out of 10. So I'd say that's probably about this group of us would say that we go and we spend the largest chunk of our day not engaged in our work. What that means, I'll break down some of the statistics. That means that 30% of America, and America is actually one of the most engaged countries that Gallup polls. 30% of Americans are engaged. They're actively engaged. They feel like they're in the flow every single day. They're working in an area where they feel strengthened, where they feel talented. And of that 30%, 2% of people are just always engaged, no matter what. It doesn't matter where they go. It doesn't matter what they're doing. They are the confetti burping unicorns, the rainbow farting pixies of the world. And if that's you, like, I'm jealous, honestly. I'm just a little jealous. It doesn't matter what you do, you're always going to be engaged. So that's 30% would be engaged from time to time. Anywhere between 43 and 46% of Americans, they would call themselves just disengaged. This is the type of people, like if you work with other people, they're doing just enough to get by. They're doing just enough not to get fired. They're doing no more, no less, or like I like to call it, they're doing the radical minimum standard. And already, I know for some of you that manage people, I see it in your eyes, like, oh. Their names are starting to come up. So that's about 4 to 5 out of 10 people that you're going to interact with every single day. Which brings us to the last group. It's about 24 to 27%. They are called the actively disengaged. These are the kind of people, they complain. They actively work against the productivity of their coworkers. The productivity of the entire team decreases just because they're around. They infect others. And in fact, Gallup has done studies on this that shows that if you cannot fire them, it is actually more beneficial to your company and to your team to pay them to stay home. I mean, get that. 3 out of 10 people that you go to work with every single day, 3 out of 10 people that are at your family gatherings, a little too close here, 3 out of 10 people, it would be better if you could just say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to pay you to stay home because you even being in our organization is bringing down the productivity level of everybody else. That's profitability, that's everything. And so for me, the people who are just disengaged, that's like more concerning to me than the actively disengaged. Because I think if we were to just take a poll, you would know the people that you go to work with every day, the people that you're interacting with, even if you're just interacting with a retail worker, you can tell which ones are actively disengaged. Those are pretty easy. It's the regular disengaged people. They're not moving the needle, they're not doing anything, and they have the biggest potential for you to be able to influence them. Because when your teams aren't engaged, it can be exhausting. And you know that if you've ever been like really engaged in a project, if you've ever been really engaged in work, really engaged in a team, those people who just aren't there, they're just kind of floating, doing the radical minimum standard, what does that do to you? Oh man, it weighs you down, right? You get like, you get exhausted because you end up having to pull the 70% of the individuals along with you to help the engagement level. So here's what I want to do is I want to just consider that maybe you're in one of those three camps. You don't have to tell anybody else. If you came with somebody, you can go ahead and say that, but like, would you say that in your day-to-day life, in the chunk, whatever that is for you, if it's work, if it's home, wherever you're at, the largest chunk of your day, would you call yourself actively engaged? Would you say that I'm just disengaged? Or would you say I'm actively disengaged in your world? So put that thought in your mind. And I'd like you to consider that one of the reasons that you may not be fully engaged, you may not be engaged, because again, statistically, only about these people are engaged. So everybody else, I'm looking at you, you're probably not. So I would like you to consider that maybe one of the reasons you're not in the 3 out of 10 is because you're not engaging in your strengths. You're not engaging in those things that strengthen you every single day, those talents that have been given to you. And most of it, I think, is because of what you've been taught. So I'm going to go over 3 myths. This is it. I'm just going to go over 3 myths, 3 truths, and then we could get out of this heat and sun and move on with our lives. Myth number 1, this is what people believe. Your personality changes as you get older. Or I like to call it I can be anyone I want to be when I grow up. Right? I mean, if you're a parent, you've probably told your kids this. Your parents probably told you this. You could be anything you want to be when you grow up. But the truth is, you're actually going to become more of who you already are. In fact, 66% of Americans believe that as we grow, our personality changes. And I see it all the time. I'm going to step aside here because this is like personal pet peeve on social media when I see people take their personality tests and like, well, I used to be an ESFP and now I'm an ENTJ. I used to be an extrovert, now I'm an introvert. I think I'm a little bit of both. I'm an ambivert. Like, no, that's not the case. That's not what happens, because as you get older, you become more and more of who you already are. In fact, there's a study that one of the longest personality studies ever done. It was a 20-year study where they took a group of 2-year-olds and they gave them a rudimentary personality test. And then 20 years later, found as many of those 2-year-olds, now 22-year-olds, and gave them the same test. And statistically, the results were the same. In fact, Gallup will say that if you take their Strengths Finder assessment, if you take that once every 10 years for the rest of your life, if correlation is a 1, they have a 0.7 to 0.8 correlation on that test. Statistically, you are becoming more and more of who you are as you get older. In fact, you don't really need a test to tell you that. How many of you have children? Okay, just so we get everybody else in. How many of you have ever been a child? Okay, great. We got everybody. Great. So I have 2 children, and I don't need a test to tell me that they're going to be more of who they already are when they're older. I have a 5-year-old. His name is Calvin, and Calvin, he loves to talk to people. Me personally, I do not. I am not very good at like coming up to people, making small talk. Calvin loves to engage with people. He is not like every other 5-year-old, inquisitive and, hey, what's your name? And all those kind of awkward questions they ask. He is like dog on the end of a chain, pulling at its collar, trying to get to somebody new every time he sees them. He is innately passionate about winning people over. In fact, we were at Pacesetter Park, we're walking around, and he sees the skate park, and immediately I saw the look in his eye. You know, it's that natural inborn talent. He starts to see the skater dudes doing all their like ollies and rail grinds and flips. I don't know any of the lingo, so I might be wrong. And you just kind of see it, and I'm holding his hand, and he's pulling a little bit long. He doesn't know anything about skating. He's never seen a skateboard, never been over there, but he's pulling, and I just, okay, this will be fun, let him go. And he is all the way out in the middle of the skate park asking people, can you do a flip? What is that? What is this? What is that? He doesn't just want to talk to them, he wants to help win them over. Now, when he gets older, do you think that he's going to turn into some sort of like introverted hobbit who likes to read? No. No, he is going to be passionate about selling to people. He's going to be passionate about trying to win people over. He's going to be passionate about connecting with others. My other son, Oliver, he's 4 years old, and he loves to know where he stands. He loves structure and he loves competition. And again, not in the way that every 4-year-old loves competition. It's like everything we're doing, he wants to know what's the score. He wants to know where are we. He says, I'll race you everywhere we go. In fact, we were out in the front yard the other day. We were playing baseball. I take that back. It wasn't really baseball. It was him with the big foam, multicolored bat, and me throwing underhand to him. And he would swing and he would miss. And I would go get the ball, and I'd pick it up, and I'd come back, and I'd throw it underhand. He would swing, he would miss. I'd go get the ball. You know how this goes. And what was the question that he asked me? If you have kids, if you have kids that are like this, he goes, "What's the score, Daddy?" I was like, "Ollie, there's no score. We're not really playing baseball. You have to actually make contact with the ball for there to be a score." So we continue, swing, miss, swing, miss, swing, miss, a couple more times, and he asks again. What does he ask? "What's the score, Daddy?" I said, "Okay, fine. Here we go, strike 1. Here we go, strike 2. Here we go, strike 3, you're out." So he's going to need therapy, which is okay, but therapy is the price that we pay to prove to our kids that they're wrong, all right? But as he gets older, is he going to lose that sense of competition? Do you think as he gets older, he's going to be like everybody plays, everybody wins, you get a participation trophy? No. Do I hope that one day he becomes a more gracious loser? Yes. But I'm sure he's going to be the kind of adult that says, you show me a gracious loser, I'll show you a loser. Half of you thought, like, well, that's kind of mean. The other half know exactly what I'm talking about, right? And so as we get older, we stay the same. And yes, our talents are innate. They're going to be there. Our goals, our achievements, our dreams, our values, those will all change. But the core of who you are is going to stay the same. The core of who you are is only going to get strengthened as you get older. In fact, we're all blessed with a unique set of talents to contribute. And I got to read this because I want to make sure I get this right. I got together with a mathematician friend of mine, and we calculated between the Clifton StrengthsFinder assessment, which Gallup does, which is your productively applied patterns of behavior, mixed with the MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which is kind of your cognitive filter and the way you process information, with spiritual gifts. Again, I work for a church, so with your top 5 spiritual gifts. If you were to take all 3 of those assessments, your strengths, the way you process information, and the gifts that were given to you, just your top 5, and you were to put those together, you would have to go, the odds of you finding someone else that's exactly like you is 1 in 357 trillion. 1 in 357 trillion, to be exact. Hold on, 1 in 357 trillion, 312 billion, 373,824,240. And it doesn't really matter what you, I mean, like the amount of humans that have ever lived on the planet, somewhere, we'll just call it about 110 billion. Okay? Like you could go back and figure out like when did humans actually start, but about 110 billion, we think, amount of humans who have ever lived. That means you would have to multiply the amount of people who have ever lived, ever, to this point. How many times? 300 times to find somebody else that has your same talents, your same processing ability, and your same gifts. 300 times the amount of people that have ever existed on the planet. And so your challenge is to apply your talents, to volunteer them, to contribute them in the best way possible, which leads us right into myth number 2. This is myth number 2. I'm sure you've heard this one. This is like the most popular one that really gets on my nerves, is that you will grow the most in your areas of weakness. You will grow the most in your areas of weakness. And we know that's true because if you've ever worked in any sort of corporate job where they do a yearly evaluation, what do we spend time talking about? Spend about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe, if you're lucky, talking about the things you did well, and then about 75% of the time talking about your what? Weaknesses, or what do they call them? I mean, if you're a manager, you call them this, right? What is it? Your areas of improvement, areas of opportunity, which is just a fun way of circling and saying, these are the things that you don't do well right now, right? What do we call, I mean, so we've got these weaknesses, and it makes us even wonder, like, what is a strength then if a weakness is your area of greatest opportunity? When you ask people for their strengths, if you've ever done hiring, I used to do hiring in my previous job, you ask them, hey, what are your strengths? And people talk about their work history, they talk about their schooling, they talk about those sorts of things. They don't talk about what makes them them. They don't talk about their talents, don't talk about who they are. And so we look at weaknesses as an area of improvement, area of opportunity. And in fact, when Gallup polled Americans and said, where do you think you're going to find the greatest impact in your job? Focusing on your strengths or focusing and building into your weaknesses? How many of you think strengths? I mean, obviously, I'm giving the talk, so it's going to be strengths. But really, how many of you would think it's strengths? I want to, okay, only about 40%. So not quite this group, but maybe with this guy right here, that group. Only about 40% of Americans, and America is one of the most strengths-focused countries in the world, thinks that we will have the biggest amount of improvement in your day-to-day life if you focus on the things that make you strong. And that, to me, is sad. It's sad because we think that good is the opposite of bad. We study bad things to figure out what good things are, right? We study divorce rates to figure out marriage. We study illness to figure out health. But the opposite of bad is not good. The opposite of bad is not bad. So if you want your company, if you want your family, if you want the things that you do to be not bad, then sure, study the bad. But what I think you should do, and what Gallup thinks you should do, is study the good. In fact, most of you, again, those of you with kids, you're part of the problem. If you think about this was another study done, that your child comes home with the following grades: English A, Science A, Social studies C, algebra F. Which do you spend the most time talking about? The F, right? Man, and you know what? When I look in the eyes of creatives and entrepreneurs especially, you could see it in their eyes and they go, yep, either that's me or that was me. That was my dad, that was my mom, that was my grandma, that was my grandpa, that was somebody who looked at me and said, we got to study the F. So what if you're good at English and social studies, you got an F in algebra? Now am I saying don't spend any time on algebra? No. Everyone, every child, every person has to have a certain level of functionality in every basic area. But the question wasn't, do you not focus on the F? The question was, where do you spend most of your time? If you get an F in algebra, what are you signing your kids up for? Extra algebra, right? Before they get a chance to go out and play, what do you ask them? Did you do your algebra? Okay, so I got to share this story. I wasn't going to, but I'm going to say, so like I've got a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. We have about 1 billion cabinets in our kitchen. It's an old house, custom cabinets, everything like that. You know what is all over the cabinets in our kitchen and our fridge? 4- and 5-year-old bits of artwork. They bring it home every single day. Every day from school. There's something else in their backpack, some other little macaroni thing or some other little cutout shapes things, and it's always like, ooh, well, what is this? And like, it's a train. I'm like, train, yeah, I thought train, not just like a random assortment of shapes. But do you know when people start or stop taking interest in the arts? The biggest decline in the arts happens in first grade. First grade. Do you know why? Any ideas? I'm serious, like any ideas? That's when you start getting a good grade on your artwork. That's when somebody has started to evaluate you based on what you can creatively contribute. That's when you start getting grades in school. That's when you say you come home with the F in algebra, and now it's we can't spend as much time on art. We can't spend as much time on English. We got to spend more time on algebra. Again, I'm not knocking algebra. That's just so I know if I'm talking with coders, like, chill out just a second, we're going to be good. So the key to changing the F is knowing why you got the A. The key to understanding why you're not so good in one area is knowing why you're so good in the others. Because weaknesses are not areas of opportunity. In fact, they are areas of least opportunity. And one more study, there was a speed reading study done where the average readers read about 90 words per minute. Average readers, 90 words per minute. They took a speed reading course and they had a moderate improvement to about 150 words per minute. That's pretty good, right? I mean, that's like almost double to my weird rounding. Then they took above average readers, the ones that have talent in reading. They started out at 350 words per minute. And they took a speed reading course. Any guesses on how well they did? 500? That's going to be like an auctioneer. Come on. Give it to me. Another one? What do you think? 1,200. Okay. I mean, that would be pretty good. 500? You only said 500. That's 1,200. 1,250. If you guessed 2,900 words per minute, you got it. 2,900, because they were above average readers. They started at 350, and they worked in the area of their strength, and it had an exponential impact. And you know that's true, right? I mean, you have to. If you're a creator, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone that likes to create something, that likes to do something, that's been given a passion that every day when you wake up, something has been keeping you awake the night before that you just have to solve, you know that when you step into that area, you know that you're in the flow. You know that things come easier. Time just flies by. And you'd love to consume more information and more time spent in that area because you already have a talent in that area. The greatest opportunity for your growth is engaging in your strengths, which brings us to myth number 3. Because I know some of you don't believe me. You still don't believe me because there's this myth. Myth number 3 is, I need to be a well-rounded individual. I'm sure some of you were told that when you were younger, right? I'm sure some of you were told that when you got on a team. I'm sure some of you tell other people that. That what the team needs from you is to chip in wherever possible, is to do whatever it takes. And I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, there's customer service things, there's retail and employee engagement that says, yeah, of course you should pick up that broom and you should sweep, you should do whatever you need to do to make the team win. But in reality, what the world needs from you, what your team needs from you, what your family needs from you, what our community needs from you, is to identify the areas of your greatest strength and volunteer them most of the time. Because nationwide, remember we said only 30%, 3 out of 10 people say that they're engaged in what they do every single day. And only 2 out of 10 people say that they go to the largest chunk of their day operating in an area of their strengths. 2 out of 10. I mean, that's like 4 or 5 of us in this room. 4 or 5 of us would say that every single day we operate in an area where our strengths are utilized most of the time. 51% of the time. 12 hours and 1 minute or 1 second of the day. And what the world needs for you is to take that unique contribution that you have and offer it up most of the time. And you know, for me, this was the hardest myth to break because it seems irresponsible. It seems irresponsible for me to not pitch in the areas of my weakness. It seems irresponsible for somebody to look at me and to say, you know, you're not really good at this. And for me to go, yeah, I'm not really focused on that. I'm focused on this. You know what else? It seems a little egotistical for me to say, you know what? I feel like I am very talented in these 3 or 4 areas. And I'm going to focus my day on them. Doesn't that? That seems a little like, ugh, I don't know if I could do that all the time. But if we talk through that, here's what we're saying. Here's what I do best. But you as my employer, you as my family member, you as my community member, you can't have it. I'm actually going to keep that away for most of my day. And I'm going to give you what's not best about me. I mean, already, if somebody actually said that to me, and they reported to me, I'd be like, yeah, you should probably look for another job. Not only for the benefit of my organization, but for your benefit. If you're keeping the best part of you away from the people around you for most of your day, that's selfish. To me, that's not engaging your strengths. That's not engaging in an area that's going to benefit anyone. The other thing is, how egotistical is it for me to say, you know what, everybody likes the things that I like. Everybody likes the things I like, and everybody loathes the things that I don't. I don't like small talk. I loathe it, in fact. I'm bad at it. But my wife, she excels at it. There is nothing better than for her to find a room and to meet every single person in that room. There's nothing better for me than to find one individual that's got a common need, an interest, or something and connect with them deeply. And so for the two of us to look at each other and say, everyone needs to be just like me, that is egotistical. How many times have you been at a job, at a school, doing something going, man, I wish I could do what this other person is doing. And how many times have you heard that same person going, yeah, I really hate this aspect of my job. And so if you can be fully engaged in your areas of strength, if you can start to identify them and arrange your day to focus in those areas of strength, you can start to tip that scale to where you're bringing the best of you every single day. Because your family needs it, your work needs it, our community needs it, and because all of you are the cream of the crop here in Northwest Ohio, our world needs you to be engaged. So I just want to encourage you, focus on your strengths. Thank you.